Let's move on to the second approach, and this is the cost approach. So the cost approach is going to be for unique properties, properties that don't have any comparisons, right? Churches, schools, post offices, police stations, things of that nature. If we wanted to do as an appraisal, we wanted to do a value, we don't have a lot to compare to, right? So in a cost approach, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what it would cost us to rebuild it, okay? And then we're going to have to take off depreciation of the building. Now, there are two ways to look at this. What would the cost of an absolute reproduction be? And what would the cost of replacing this building be? So it would depend on the circumstances. If this old building that's in this picture here on this slide, how many stonemasons do you know? You might know one, maybe two, but this took an entire community. How long would it take 2 stonemasons to build that church? Be a lot more value in it today, right? It'd take a lot more to reproduce this thing stone by stone by stone. So some historical societies would anticipate if something happened to that church, it to be rebuilt exactly the way it was. That's quite the value. Now, a replacement value would say, all right, look, it's a church. I get it. It was very beloved, but it's gone now. So what would it cost to replace the church with modern amenities, heat pumps, some sort of, maybe we can build it out of concrete or whatever it's going to take, put modern roofing in it, modern heating, modern water, things of that nature, right? Everything up to date. That's a different value, and it's a lot less expensive than rebuilding this thing from stone. So that's the first thing we have to ask when we're the appraiser. We got to say, all right, how do you want this? Do you want it reproduced exactly, or do you want it replaced? All right, so those things are important. Now, so that's the first thing we have to figure out. So let's say we're just going to replace this. We would figure out how much per square foot it would cost to replace it. And we'd come up with a value. We got to remember one key item here. Land, the dirt, never depreciates. Never depreciates. So it's always the building that depreciates, okay? So we want to estimate the current cost of reconstructing and then deduct any accrued depreciation and then add back the land, okay? So the land is always going to be there. In this particular case, let's just throw out some numbers there just because we're allowed to, all right? Just because I can. So let's say this is going to cost me, I have a land value of $100,000, all right? That's the land value. And let's say that it's going to cost me to rebuild this building with new products. Let's say it's going to cost me $400,000 to rebuild it, okay? Now, if that building is, let's say, well used, and it is 20 years old, and we expect it to last 100 years. We expect it to last 100 years. So what we have is the life divided by our life expectation. That's going to be our depreciation factor. So this is equals 2/10 or 1/5, right? 1/5. So, and we'll get into that in a minute. Just hang in there. I just want to show you by this example. All right, so this is called the age over expected life method. So I'm going to take 1/5 of the cost to rebuild it, all right, which is what? 1/5 of 400,000 is what? My brain is shutting off. It's getting late. 400 times 20%, 80,000. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have depreciation of 80,000. All right. So it's going to cost us 400,000 to rebuild it. I'm going to depreciate 80,000 of that, which means that my value without the land is 320,000. And then I'm going to add back the 100,000 for the land. That means that if I'm the appraiser, I'm going to say that this property is worth $420,000. All right. So I took the cost it was to build it new. I depreciated it some. In this particular case, the age over life method, which is not too difficult. I took that off of there. And then I added back the land. Remember, land does not depreciate. You can't depreciate land. And I came up with a value. Okay. All right. Let's move and see what we got here. Like I said, we have to figure out whether we're going to reproduce this or replace it. We can replace it for 400,000. If we have to reproduce it, it could be $1 million, right? It could be an exact reproduction of this, could be $1 million. So we need to know. So that would be one of the first questions. What do you desire? All right. So let's just stick with the replacement costs at this particular point, right? So reproduction is the cost of rebuilding exactly as it was before, and replacement reconstruction is the cost of rebuilding with current supplies. It's just easier to do and less expensive, right? Now, I just told you about effective age and economic life. So how much economic life is gone at the effective age? The effective age can be rolled back with updates. All right, what I mean by this is that if this old church was only used on Sunday morning by a dozen old ladies, maybe it's 20 years old, but it's pristine. So maybe we think that the effective age is maybe only 10 years old, right? Not heavily used. So yes, chronologically it's 20, but as the appraiser, I'm going to make a judgment and say it's 10 years because nobody uses it. But let me change the scenario. What if this was used for after school for kids? There's a gymnasium downstairs where kids play basketball, throw things around, run around, everything else. It may chronologically be 20 years old, but the abuse and wear and tear on that building might make it effectively twice that. So we have to make a judgment on the use of the building, how it's used, what they use it for, things of that nature. So the effective age, even though chronologically 20, could be 40, right? Depending on how heavily used it is. And then the next part is how long we think it's going to last. What's the economic life of this? It's going to last 100 years? It's going to last 50 years, right? It depends. Depends on construction. It depends on use. It depends on all of those things. All right. So the effective age is what we expect, what we think it's going to be. What about historical sites or landmarks on property? We're going to have to deal with the Historical Society, and they're going to tell me to replace it, reproduce it. And that's going to be extremely buku money. As long as they're going to pay for it, I'm going to take that into consideration. Now, historical sites are probably not heavily used anymore, but does it have wear and tear? The money can be up there. The money can be up there. All right, so this is the age over life method. It's the age over life method. As we're doing that, we're going to take a look at a couple of things, right? What's the physical deterioration? How much is physically deteriorated? Can we fix it? Or is it incurable? If they're physically possible, economically feasible, can I paint? I can paint. Can I fix shutters, things of that nature? Sure. Can I fix a cracked foundation? Probably not, right? That would be incurable. So there are things I can fix, things I can't. So we have to take that into effect also. That's physical deterioration. It could be curable or incurable. We also have functional obsolescence. If I have 4 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, is that functionally adequate? Not really, right? Not in modern day. If I have a window air conditioner that cools the whole house, is that functionally adequate? Probably not, right? Depending on the size of the house. So the physical design or features that are now considered undesirable, right? We need some outdated plumbing fixtures. We need to, right? All of those things, right? One bathroom and 4 bedrooms, absolutely. That's not unusual back then, right? 1 bathroom for the whole family. Now, if you had 2 people in the bedroom, each bedroom, which is what the law is, that's 8 people sharing 1 bathroom. So what we have, right, this is functional obsolescence. We need another bathroom. But here's the problem. What if our septic system doesn't hold another bathroom? So that's not curable. I can't fix that, right? I can't fix that. My septic system won't handle another bathroom. But if it could I put on another bathroom? Sure. So now that's curable. So there are things we can fix, and again, things we can't fix, right? So functional obsolescence, right? So we have physical deterioration or obsolescence, we have functional obsolescence, and then we have economic or locational obsolescence. These are always incurable. If I buy a house next to a potato field, acres and acres of potato fields, and I bought this big house, and then the next year they don't grow potatoes in that field anymore, and I'm wondering what's going on, and then they come and flatten the land. Then I see them pouring a roadway or a tarmac. And 2 years down the road, that potato field becomes a commercial airport or a commuter airport. Now I live next to the airport. Is that a problem? That's a pretty big change for me, right? From that farm or quiet farmer's field to now a commercial airport. Is that curable? Can I do anything about that? Can't do a thing about it, right? Can't do a thing about it. So that is economic or locational obsolescence, right? That is what that is. That's the third different type. So you have physical, functional, and economic, all right? Physical and functional can be curable or incurable, depending on what it is. Economic will always be incurable. Here is just a cost approach. So we're going to take the cost to build new. We're going to subtract the depreciation and add back the land and the site improvements. If we put driveways in, if we put sidewalks in, if we put streets in, things of that nature, those are site improvements. They do not depreciate either, all right? So let's say we have a building that's valued at $97,500. That's what it's going to cost us to rebuild this. And we have some depreciation. We have curable depreciation, which we can fix for $4,000. And again, this is the appraiser making their best judgment. But we also have incurable depreciation for $97,500. And then we have some functional obsolescence. Maybe the bathroom's too small, $2,000. So our total depreciation here is going to be $15,750. $15,750. So we have $27,000 in land and $8,000 in site improvements. So here's on the bottom here, tiny in the bottom, our building valuation is $97,500. We're going to subtract off our depreciation for $15,750. So that is going to give us $81,750. And then we're going to add back the land value and the site improvements for $35,000. So as the appraiser, I'm going to say the value of this property right now, as it stands, is $116,750. Now, there are a couple other ways to deal with depreciation. They can do a straight line depreciation. If it's a property, in this particular case, a straight line, $120,000 property has a land value of $30,000. So that means that the building value is $90,000, right? So if we know that the economic life is 60 years for that building, we just take 60 and divide it into 90,000, and every year we're going to depreciate this building by $1,500, right? 90,000 building value divided by 60 years, $1,500 annual depreciation. And it's a straight line every year. How many years has it been open? Let's take off that amount, okay? And that's what your depreciation is, your value. So just another example, a $400,000 property has a land value of $90,000. So the building value is $310,000, right? 400 minus 90. Economic life is 50 years. What's the straight line depreciation? Well, if we know it's going to last 50 years, we need a straight line. We're just going to divide this 310 by 50 years, right? Let's make life easy for ourselves here. 6,200 is going to be our annual depreciation, right? And then we're going to figure out how long it is. What's our effective age? So 6,200, it's been around for 10 years, right? Effectively. So we're going to multiply that 6,200 by 10 years, and our total depreciation is going to be 62,000. Let's look at the math packet. Let's do one problem there. John is appraising a 3,000 square foot church that is 3 years old. The church has a useful life of 72 years. If the church were new, it would cost $127 a square foot to fix, to build. The land is valued at $850,000. The church also has a broken window, broken door, and shingles missing, costing $2,000. The church is located 2 miles from a nuclear power plant, which John deducts $25,000. Okay. What would the value of the church using the cost approach? Okay. So first things first, 3,000 square feet to build it times $127 per square foot. So our cost to replace it is going to be $381,000. That's going to be our cost to replace it. Now we got to figure out some depreciation. Now, if we use our effective life, right, versus our useful life, our effective age, useful life. So we have 3 years old, because that's what it says, and we think it's going to last 72 years, right? So 370 seconds. Let's get a fraction out of that. 3 divided by 72. So 4.17. Let's use that. Okay, let's use that. 4.17. All right. 4.17. That's 3. It's yeah, good luck with that. Let me know how that works for you. Nobody calling me on that? 0.0417. That's going to be our depreciation factor times our cost to replace it, 381. Okay, times our cost to replace it. So we have a straight line depreciation. We have this depreciation. The first level of depreciation is going to be multiplying that out. So that's going to be 15,875. All right. And that's going to be our age life. Age/life. All right. Well, now we also have some other depreciations that we're taking here. We have physical obsolescence for 2,000. Broken window, broken door, shingles are missing. All right. So that's $2,000 they have established for physical. Now we also have some economic depreciation. Can I change the fact that there's a nuclear power plant down the street? I can't change that, right? So he's going to deduct $25,000 off of that. All right. So that's economic. So we have these three. So we add these three up, and these are going to be our total depreciation. All right. 15,875 minus 2,000 minus 25,000. All right. 15,875, 2,000, 25,000. So we have a net 42,875 of depreciation. So now what we got is this. We have our $381,000. That's what it's going to cost us to rebuild it. Minus our depreciation, 42,875. All right. We have to add back at this point the land value. And the land value says it's $850,000. All right. Because land what? Doesn't depreciate. So we have to take it out of there. All right. Land doesn't depreciate. So we're going to add all this up to get a value. And that value, when we add it up, 125. That's going to be the value of our property. That's the appraised value of our property. All right, using the cost approach. So we used 370 seconds, which would be our age over life. Came up with 15,875. Less our physical depreciation, less our economic depreciation. That's going to be 42,875 total. We're going to take off of there. Take our 381, which is our cost to rebuild, minus that 42,875 plus the 850,000, and then that's going to give us the value, current value of that property. okay? And again, this one's a little more complicated, but you needed to see all the moving parts. You probably, if you got one on the test, it wouldn't be this difficult. Pretty straightforward. Okay, that's approach number 2. The next one is going to be the income capitalization approach. This is going to be where we figure out how much income these produce and what do I want as my return on investment. If you remember our T, our magic T went something like this. In this particular case, it would give us our net operating income, which would be our partial. This would be our value. What's our total value? And this would be called a capital contribution, all right, our capital, or our return on investment, or our profit percentage. Any of them, they're all the same. They're all the same, all right? Capital contribution, return on investment, profit percentage, whatever. So if we have our value and we multiply it by our percentage of return, now we know how much we're going to need for our net operating income. And if I have my net operating income and I divide it by my capitalization rate, I know what the value of my property is. Okay? So let's just reach out here. Let's look at this. Okay. If I brought in $10,000 in net operating income for the year, net operating income, and I want to, if I'm the owner, I'm the person looking to value this, and I need to work out about a 15% return on investment or cap contribution. How do I find the value that I'm willing to pay based on $10,000 worth of net operating income? All I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 10,000 by 15%. And if I do that, it should come to $150,000, but I'm going to do it on a calculator because that's why I have one. Divided by 15%. No, it does not, does it? 10,000 divided by 15%. All right. So to me, this property would only be worth $66,667 per round. That would be the value, right? Yeah, way too many sixes. But now here's the thing. If I want to, let's say I want to sell this building, I'm going to have to make a business decision because this is net. So I'm either going to have to figure out how to make more, how to sell more, or how to cut my costs. So if I want this number to go up, I need to make this number go up, right? Based on some kind of percentage. So I can sit here and make a decision, a business decision, saying, all right, I need to get this property value up more if I'm going to sell it. So I either got to slash my expenses now, or I need to bump up how much I'm selling, my sales. So that's how I can make that decision. Right, based on that income capitalization. And it's really pretty straightforward. It's not a lot of tricks, right? Not a lot of tricks. All right, so let's look at the rest of this. So we're talking about the present worth of future rights. How much in the future is it going to bring me? What's that my value? So if we take our gross income, our gross minus our operating expenses, that's going to give us our net operating income. And if we take out our mortgage, our debt service comes off after this. So then minus our debt service, and that's going to give me my cash flow. All right. We're not going to talk too much about cash flow. Just understand that your debt service, your mortgage, and your interest on your mortgage don't come in net operating income. It does not work that way. All right. So we need our gross sales less our operating expenses. That's what it's going to cost us. Deducting for any vacancy, obviously, if we don't have anybody in there, we can't make any money, right? And then we're going to come up with a rate of return. All right, this is pretty much what I was just talking about. If I had $245,000 worth of net income, and I'm the owner, and I want to make sure I work on a 10% return, That means my building would be worth $2,450,000, my business. Because why? I just divided this 245 by 10%. Yes, net operating income is per year. Gross is it per year. It's not monthly. Okay, that is per year. All right. So if I'm going to sell this building, I want to know that somebody at 10% is going to pay me $2,450,000. Somebody comes in and offers me $1 million, I'm going to say, no, it's not enough based on what my operating income is. All right. I'm going to need more. And that's how we get it. That's how we would figure out the value of this building. Right. And we can figure it all out by working our way around it. All right. So somebody tell me the value. If I clear this off, if I had net operating income of $75,000 and I want to work at a 12% annual rate, somebody tell me what my value of my building is. Divided that 750, right? That's 75,000 by 12%, $625,000. That will be the value. So a cap rate, capitalization rate, is literally what we talked about. It's a return on your investment. It's your ROI. It's your profit percentage. They just call it a capitalization rate. That's really all we're calling it. Now, net operating income, please be aware of this now. The amount of income you have left over from your income producing property after all expenses are paid, except debt service. Debt service is your mortgage and interest. That comes later. So you have your effective gross income minus your operating expenses, net operating income. All right. Now, to get your effective gross, you got to take your what you expect less your vacancies. That's going to give you an effective gross. Subtract the operating expenses to find net operating income, management fees, taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, but not mortgage debt services from the effective gross rental income. So we have a 12-unit apartment community generating $100,000 a year in rental income. And the owner spends $55,000 a year on management, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. What's the net operating income of this property? What's the net operating income of this property? It's pretty easy. 100 less the 55, our net operating income is 45,000. All right. All right. So let's look at doing this with comps. So I need to figure out what a cap rate would be. What's a good cap rate? If I want to invest in this building, I want to know what I can expect for my money. So in this particular case, comparative number one, we have three comps. Comparative number one had a sales price of $489,000, net operating income of $42,000. They worked off of an 8.6 capitalization rate. And simply, this is how they did it. 42,000 divided by 489, 8.6%. Comp number two, 511 sales price, net operating income of 49,000. So they had a 9.6 cap rate. Comp number three, same thing, 496 sales price, net operating income 47,300, a 9.5% comp rate. Now, I got to tell you, this would be more commercial. The MLS is going to be more residential. Your commercial would use a different system, okay? And you could probably fish out these details from that because the brokers would put that information in there, but it wouldn't be in your multiple listing system. It would probably be in a different system for commercial. All right, so we got to figure all these out. But in this particular case, we're going to take an average of the three. Because really we're not finding similars, we're just finding rate of returns, all right? So average the three cap rates for a 9.23% cap rate, all right? So if I make $45,000 on this property and I need a 9.23 cap rate, how much is the value? What am I willing to pay? What am I willing to pay here, all right? We're going to divide this 45,000 by 9.23. The value of this property is going to be $487,541. All right. And as it sits down here, 45,000, we need a 9.23 return rate. So it would be $487,541. All right, let's look at this problem. In this particular case, it's already done for us, but let's see how they broke it out. So we have a group of apartments that we have, okay? And we know that if we rent all of these out, it's going to give me $60,000 at full capacity. And I also have some vending machines in there and some payphones. I don't know if we use the payphones anymore, but the vending machines generate $600 worth of income. So I have a net of $60,600. That's what I expect to bring in. But I don't have 100% vacancy here. I only have 96% vacancy. So I'm going to have to take that vacancy off, that 4% off. So I'm going to take this 60,600 and multiply it by 4%, and I'm going to come up with 2424. So my effective net gross, my effective gross income, my effective gross income, 58,176. That's what I expect to make. And then I have all of my expenses, all right? Taxes, insurance, heat, management, advertising, all of these things. And that's going to come to $27,300. So I'm going to take my gross income, subtract my operating income, and that means that I'm going to net, what I'm looking to net, $30,876. And your real estate taxes, no, your mortgage interest and your mortgage payment is your debt service, not your taxes. We got $38.76. If we wanted a 10% overall capitalization rate, we divide it by 10%, and we come up with a value of $308,760. All right, that's what we wanted to work off. So we can say our building's worth $308,760. That's a pretty simplified version, but it's not completely off base. All right, relatively easy question. So remember we said before, we want to do a sales comparison approach for single family homes. What if I have a duplex? What if I have a duplex that is actually rental income? And, or let's say even I have a single family that I rent. I don't live in it, I rent. I want to find the value of my property based on what the gentleman down the street sold his property for, or the lady. She had a rental property down the street, and her rental property down the street, same as mine, basically, and she was getting $1,000 a month. All right. And she just sold her property for $250,000. Well, I'm only getting $950 a month, but I want to know what the value of my property is based on what she got. Well, obviously, if I take my 1,000 and I divide it into my 250,000, I have what's called a gross rent multiplier of 250. That means for every $1 of rent I got $250 in sales price, right? I have a gross rent multiplier of $250. Now, you can either do this annually or you can do it monthly. I like to do it monthly. It just makes my brain easier. But you can, if you want to multiply 1,000 a month times 12 and then do it, that's fine. Either way, it'll be a smaller number. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take this gross rent multiplier and I'm going to take my rent and I am going to multiply it by my gross rent multiplier. So 950 times 250. Who's got their calculator out? Save me some steps here. Yeah, 237,500. So according to the sale down the street, my property would be worth 237,500. I get a little less rent, right? So it should be worth a little less just based on the rental income. All right. And this is a gross rent multiplier, and that's what we do. It's that simple. So if I changed all of this, just to do one more example, and we do it annually. So let's say the guy down the street gets $15,000 a year for rent, and he just sold it for $345,000, and I get $13,000 a year. I want to know my value based on what they sold it for. Somebody do that for me. Tell me what I'm going to get. What's the value of my property here? I'm going to take the 15,000, divide it into 345,000. That's going to give me a gross rent multiplier. Gross rent multiplier. And then I'm going to take that number, whatever that is, and I'm going to multiply it by my 13,000. 23, right? We divided this. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to multiply this by 23, and it's going to be $299,000. We just use a smaller number. We use an annual number, but it came out the same one way or the other. If we use a monthly number, that gross rent multiplier is going to be bigger. If we use an annual number, that gross rent multiplier is going to be smaller, but it's all going to be the same. Okay, we're just multiplying the rent times 12 or the multiplier by 12. It doesn't matter. Okay, and that is our gross rent multiplier. Gross rent multiplier. So we just did what we were just talking about, right? Our annual income divided by the sales price is going to give us our gross rent multiplier and our rental. Right? That's what we were doing. If we have a gross rent multiplier of 7,800, our sales price of 82,000, our gross rent multiplier is going to be what? 10.51. Our annual rent 7,800, our gross is at 82. We're just going to divide them out. That's all we're going to do. And then we'll go back and use it. So using a gross rent multiplier of 15, what would our suggested market value be on a house grossing $7,800 in annual rent? All right. So we're going to take that $7,800 and we're going to multiply by 15, right? Seems to me to be the way I'd do it. All right. Multiply by 15 and come up with a sales price, $117,000. Now, the appraiser's approach to value. And we're going to do a couple of problems there after the break. We're going to do a couple of problems that are income approach. We'll get there in a second. The appraisers have to determine if all the valuation approaches are which one's appropriate to use. The first thing they have to do is they have to look at the approaches. All right, I have a unique church. What approach? I can't use the sales comparison approach. I don't have any comparison. It's not producing any income, so I can't use an income approach. Well, which one I got to use? I got to use the cost approach. So that's the first thing they got to do is determine which one's going to give them the proper value, right? So is it multiple apartments that you're selling all at once? I'm going to have to use an income approach, right? Because I don't have that kind of comparisons, and I don't need a cost approach, right? If I have a single family home or vacant land, the best thing I can do is look for comps, right? So we have to figure that out. Right? And he's going to analyze and weigh the different approaches and determine a best estimate, right? Valuation of the three methods. What's the best one? All right. And he does not use, the appraiser does not use simple averaging. All right. Not going to use simple averaging here. We talked about CMA, comparative market analysis. BPO is a broker price opinion. All right, dust, we talked about these are elements of value, right? So it would be demand, utility, transferability. What's the S? Demand, utility, transferability, scarcity. Scarcity is the S, all right? The three different approaches, cost, income, sales. All right. True or false, real estate agents use a comparative market analysis to determine the probable market value of a real property. Yeah, we determine a probable selling price, all right? The appraisers are going to give an opinion of value, all right? We're going to give them an estimate, but we're not going to give them an opinion of value. This occurs when you have design features that are no longer desirable in the current real estate market, such as outdated kitchen fixtures or an unusual bedroom to bathroom ratio. Physical would be if the shutters are falling down. This would be functional. There you go. This would be functional. All right. Functional obsolescence. All right. Everything works. It's just not enough of it. It's not desirable. All right. We calculate net operating income by effective gross income minus operating expenses. Going to give us our net operating expense. Okay. Net operating expense. If the comparable property feature is superior to the subject property, we would adjust the comparable property which way? Upward or downward? If the comp is better than us, we're going to take it down, right? We're going to take it downward. And if it's not as good as ours, we're going to go upward, right? Which comparable is best for a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath in Durham, North Carolina? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath on the same street, a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath on a nearby similar street, or a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath in Chapel Hill? Yeah, remember, we want to be as close as possible. We want to make as few adjustments as we possibly can. And if it's a nearby similar street, we're going to go there.
If you like this video, feel free to share it with a friend. For more real estate education content, please subscribe to the channel. From all of us at Seacoast Real Estate Academy, thank you for watching.